Welcome to the Dripping in Black podcast, where we celebrate Black excellence throughout the Black diaspora. Here's your host, David V. Lewis.
What's up, good people all across the world? This is the Dripping in Black podcast. I am your host, David V. Lewis, and per usual, we have another fantastic guest who represents Black excellence in the Black diaspora. Today's guest is Pamela Moore. Pamela Moore, say hello to the world.
Hello, world. Happy fall. Hi, David.
All right. And so Pamela is a mover and shaker, and we're going to learn a lot about her. But if you have been following the podcast, you know we start with a very simple but not so simple question to introduce our guest, and that is, who is Pamela Moore?
Well, thank you for having me, David. First of all, who is Pamela Moore? So Pamela Moore is the daughter of Betty and William Edwards, first and foremost. My two most favorite people in the whole wide world. I lost them both recently, but every day I am reminded that I am their child. I am a native Detroiter. I was educated by Detroit Public Schools, largest public district in the state of Michigan. I am an East Sider. For those of us from Detroit, we always like to tell what side of town we're from. East Side, grew up on the East Side, still live on the East Side. I don't know what will take me from the East Side of Detroit. Detroit's been good to me. Educated here. Educated at Wayne State University, bachelor's degree, master's degree. I worked for the last three mayors, which were some very interesting years of my life. Wow. Mayor Kwame Kilpatrick, Mayor Dave Bing, and Mayor Mike Duggan. Wow. And from there, I ended up at the Detroit Public Schools Foundation, which feels like just kind of my life is full circle back to where I should be, giving back to the district that gave me so much and that really prepared me for everything that I've done my entire life. For fun, I dance, I teach dance, I travel the world. As far away as I can go, I go. And I have a need for speed. I used to have a motorcycle. I like things that go fast, cars, boats, roller coasters.
Wow.
That's who I am.
Wow. So I got a few follow-ups.
Okay.
So when we say East Side, this is global. So what streets are we talking about when you say East Side?
So I grew up on Burns and Warren, and I currently live on Jefferson. I live close to Belle Isle. So I moved west there for a few years, but somehow I ended up back close to the water. I love the water. And happy to be here near the water. No children. You had asked me about some personal tidbits about no children and single. So I'll add that.
Okay.
But I have 51,000 children at the Detroit Public Schools Community District. So
yes, indeed. And we'll dive into that. But I have to talk about, we talked pre-show, you gave us a glance of your mansion on the way to where you're set up. And, I just want to put that out there because there's this belief that East Side don't have these type of homes, but obviously you're on the East Side and you're living in quite the home. So that's just for our audience.
I appreciate that. I do have some beautiful surroundings right now. I'm in a condo, but on the river, and Detroit has some beautiful homes, beautiful housing stock, beautiful neighborhoods. I always tell people Detroit's not what you think. If you've never visited, you should come.
Yeah. All right. So let's jump right into it. All right. You wear many hats, but we had you on the show because of you being the president and CEO of Detroit Public Schools Foundation. So tell our audience, what is the Detroit Public Schools Foundation?
So we are a 501c3 nonprofit corporation. We were created by Detroit Public Schools to assist in fundraising. So public districts typically receive public dollars, state dollars, federal dollars, local dollars. We go after the private dollars from corporations, foundations, and even individuals. We do traditional fundraising, which we just had our signature event called Champions of Education, where we celebrate our children. I always have the children performing. We always lift up a partnership that was important to us over the past year. We lifted up our partnership with DTE and the DTE Foundation. They assisted us in raising $23 million to purchase tablets, internet, and technical support for all 51,000 children. So it's a celebration. So that's kind of the traditional fundraising we do. We give golf outings in the summer. And then the majority of our work is serving as fiduciary over program grants. So for example, we have a very large program grant from the Kellogg Foundation, which focuses on parent engagement. We know that we have to care for our children when they're in the classroom and when they're outside of the classroom, when they go home, after school programs. And so in the way you really make sure that that child is okay is forming a bond with that parent. So it's $1 million grant that we received for this work. We're in our 4th year now. And so that's just an example of, we write the grants, we receive the grants, and then we administer that grant. We make sure that the funder gets what they want at the end of when that grant period is up. Usually that means a report. That usually means data, metrics. How did that investment impact our children? How many children were impacted? How many families were impacted? And so our mission is to enhance educational opportunities and create those opportunities for Detroit Public Schools community district children, their families, and our educators. So that's our mission, and our vision is just to arm our students with all the tools and resources that they need once they step out of those doors in the 12th grade, whether they're going to college or whether they're going straight to a career. Again, the district was very good to me, and we were resource plentiful when I came through the district. That is no longer the case. And so that is what we do. We fill in the gaps.
Yeah, man. I think when I talked to you and we connected, I said this might be dangerous. I could almost talk to you for hours just off of what you just talked about there. So much stuff there. So the first thing is, we're talking to the world. So when you say words like fiduciary, we ask that you break that down for the common layman. What's a fiduciary?
So a fiduciary is, we take responsibility for it. We oversee it. We administer it. Again, we write the grant to foundations, corporations, based on what the needs are inside of the district. And when those grants are funded, they come to us and we re-grant them to the district. So we do an agreement with the district, but we are responsible because we receive the dollars. And so we oversee that work. We make sure that the work is done appropriately, it's implemented timely. We spend the dollars the way they were intended to be spent. We are responsible for those funds. So that's what fiduciary means.
Yeah. And so, to enlighten our audience a little bit, we think of public schools and the money that public schools get for the general fund, even that money is earmarked, right? And this is budgeted pretty much away. And the disadvantage district like Detroit would have is that, it's an entire district for the entire city, right? As opposed to, let's say, a Troy, it's a neighborhood district and they got a lot of private funding coming along with their public funding. And so ultimately you all are filling that void, if I hear you correctly.
So, funding is a very complicated, how dollars come into a public district. It is very complicated. But currently, Michigan, all public districts across Michigan, the per pupil funding is now $8,700. We are at the floor of that calculation for this for these allowance funds, which is the per pupil funding.
Wow.
When we look at Birmingham, Bloomfield, and Southfield, they get, I want to say it's $3,300 more dollars than we do, just out of that pot. Now, we also get local dollars. Now, when Detroit Public Schools became Detroit Public Schools Community District, this is more information than you want also. It happened after the state takeover. The state handed us back the district in 2016 with a $617 million deficit. Oh, thank you so much for handing that back to us. So the tax revenue and the dollars that come in through taxes, that money pays off that debt now. So we get that per pupil allowance. We also get federal dollars for the high poverty that's in the district. We get a lot of those dollars. Those dollars are restricted, though. They can't pay for capital improvements. They can't pay for teacher salaries. So these wealthier suburbs have property taxes and other ways to fund public education. So that per pupil allowance ends up being $13,000, $14,000 at the end of the day. Now, what I will say is the Biden administration has been very good to us. We have gotten COVID relief funds. 1.2 billion with a B is coming to Detroit. It's a one-time infusion of money. It's to pay for COVID. So we are testing weekly. We're teaching staff, we're testing staff, and we're testing students where we've gotten parental permission. So that costs a lot of money to test weekly. So, and all of the COVID supplies, but it also is going to pay for our capital improvements. Our buildings were run down and in need of repair and maintenance to the tune of almost $1 billion. So some of that money is going to go towards that. It's going to go towards technology. Now our children have technology at home, as well as 1-to-1 ratio of technology in the classroom. So that money, we are grateful for that money, but that money goes away in 2 years, and then we're back to the drawing board. So again, the per pupil funding is just not enough. We have a high special needs population. Detroit Public Schools Community District can't turn any child away. We have 1,500 homeless students that have self-identified as being homeless. In the winter of 2020, we heard these stories from our police department that they were picking up our students and they had nowhere to go. So homeless means, the definition means you don't have permanent housing. So they're at relatives' houses. They're sleeping in cars. The families don't have permanent housing. And then food insecurity is just another. So there's so many issues related to poverty that we have to address, because poverty comes into the classroom every day. So again, it goes back to that whole child commitment that the district has. We want to know that that child is okay when they're in the classroom and when they're out of the classroom. So public dollars, I just did this lunch and learn yesterday that was entitled "Why Public Funding is Not Enough." And that is why the DPS Foundation is why our work is so important, because we need, like I was telling you before we got started, I graduated with 1,000 students when I graduated from Cass Tech, when we were in the old building. If I could just get in touch with 10,000 alums that could help us with this work, if everybody could send me $25, you know, I think we don't really understand what our children, you know, and you don't know what you don't have, right? But our children are lacking so much. When the state took over the district and managed our finances, music went away, sports went away in many of the schools, art went away. So we've reinstated those programs, but those programs cost. When you live in the suburbs, oftentimes parents pay for the uniforms, parents pay for the travel, parents pay for a lot of things. Our parents can't afford that. So they look to us to find those dollars to bridge those gaps.
And so, man, I want to talk a little bit about to tap into so much, but I want to talk a little bit about, so COVID hits. So you get all the stuff you just laid out, whether it's COVID or not, right? Exists in Detroit.
That's right.
And then you get COVID.
That's right.
So talk a little bit about how that impacted what the work that you're doing.
Yeah, again, so I have to go back to when the state controlled our district. The curriculum was outdated. Our test scores were almost last in the country.
Wow.
Facilities were not maintained, were in need of repair. I mean, teacher salaries, we paid for some things on the backs of teachers, their salaries were cut. All of these things had to be addressed, right? And so, again, as we got the district back in 2016, we, the residents, elected our school board, which they were seated in January of 2017, and they hired a superintendent, Dr. Nikolai Vitti. He's from this area. He had just turned around the Jacksonville, Florida schools. And he had all of these things to address, right? So he's improving. He updated the curriculum. He got the teacher. We have the highest salaries now of an incoming teacher in the state of Michigan. I mean, he went to work. He did all he could do. We were on a roll. Things were improving. We had chronic absenteeism, all kinds of things we were addressing. And then COVID hits. And the first thing we thought of, and the district thought of, is these children are not going to be eating 3 times a day, because we feed all of our children. We have such high poverty that all children are eligible for free breakfast and lunch, whether you need it or not.
Yeah.
And so that was kind of the first line of thinking. One, how are we going to educate children from home? And how are we going to feed them? And so that is when the philanthropic community went to work and said, don't even worry about it. We'll raise the money for the tablets. But we had to order the tablets. It took several months for them to come in. We were photocopying curriculum materials. I mean, we had food pickup sites for families to come get food. We were delivering to families that couldn't come and pick up food. COVID was just a nightmare, and Detroit was one of the first communities to be hard hit. So think about the mental health issues now that children are back in school. We've got to deal with the mental health issues, and we're using that Biden money for those services as well, because our children have lost grandma. They lost Mr. Jones down the street. They lost the postman. And so COVID was devastating. But again, thanks to the philanthropic community and lots of individuals that gave generously, we raised that money. Every child now has a tablet, an internet at their home, technical support, and we're trying to get back on track. We're testing every week. When you test, there are cases. So we have quarantines. We have quarantine teachers right now, but we are determined to keep these doors open, because we know young children especially need face-to-face learning. A lot of our children did not thrive sitting in front of a computer trying to learn their lesson. Small children.
I would say wholeheartedly, it was a rejection of that method, because I'm a educator as well. I work in Westwood Public School District, and our kids rejected that model. They decided, I'm not doing that. I'm not doing that. And so, yes, I wouldn't say just young kids, because I'm at the high school. It's the high school kids as well. They need to be in front of their teachers. Teachers need to be in front of them. They need to be in the building.
And high schoolers are they are wanting to socialize. They are wanting to see their peers. They are wanting to see the boys. The girls are wanting to see the boys, and the boys are wanting to see the girls. It was devastating. And at one point, 25% of our children were not signing in, because we could track that through the tablets. Wow. And the district went knocking on doors. Excuse me, where's little Timmy? He hasn't signed on. And little Timmy maybe was at his grandmother's house, He didn't take his tablet because the parents were worried about the tablet not getting back home. You know, it was a
Real
year of
problems.
lost learning. We lost
Yeah.
a lot in 2020.
Yeah.
We lost a lot. And
Yeah.
so now we're trying to make up for that. We have tutors, we have nurses, we have mental health services now to deal with that period that our children went through.
Yeah. Okay. So I want to kind of wrap my arms around this conversation a little bit. I want to go back and have you give us a little bit of your history. So where did you go to school, starting with elementary on up?
So I went to Hilger Elementary, which was on Forest and Iroquois. And then middle schools were created when I was in elementary school. And my parents thought, oh, okay, it's kind of this innovative idea. Middle schools actually allowed us to work at our own pace. And so you knew who the super smart kids were, and you knew who the kids were that were struggling, because everybody kind of knew where everybody was, but teachers met you where you were. So I went to Whitney Young Middle School. They put me on a bus, picked me up at my elementary school, took me to Whitney Young Middle School, which was near Belle Isle. We went to Belle Isle, seems like every day. We studied the leaves, we went to the zoo, we looked at the snow, we ran around, Belle Isle. So, and then Cass Tech in the 9th grade, which was just a huge experience, and with so many other young people from all across the city. You had the children of doctors and lawyers, and you had just average, young people like me that came off the east side. But
Indeed.
Cass was a very unique model where you could go into the area that you were interested in career-wise. You could, take architecture classes, you could take plumbing classes, you could take business classes. You decided what your curriculum was going to be. And many of my peers, they left Cass and they went right into jobs. So Cass was an unusual experience, but a very, very rich experience.
Yeah. Okay. And so now you're working for the Detroit Public Schools Foundation, and there's a lot of challenges with Detroit Public Schools pre and during, and we're still in COVID, right? COVID hasn't quite left us yet, right? Man, what can you do? I mean, so you got this entire district with a myriad of issues. What does the Detroit Public School Foundation do about these problems?
So I think the first thing we do is we get on Dripping in Black podcast and talk about it and to the world, right? And my goal ever since I came in 2016 is to connect with our alumni. They're everywhere. They're all across the country. They are living abroad. They're everywhere. You can't go anywhere. I can't go anywhere. There were 5,000 students at Cass when I came through Cass. You can barely go anywhere where somebody didn't go through to Cass at some point. Right. Cass was just it's a big school. So I want to connect. Still is. I want to connect with our alums. I want them to know, and I want them to think about what DPS gave them. There was nothing I didn't have at DPS. They asked me what instruments I wanted to play. I said, wow. I think I want to play the violin. I think I want to play the harp. They gave me a harp and they gave me a violin and I played them. Art, sports. And so I want us to think about what this district gave us and for us to just give back. It doesn't have to be a lot. And it doesn't even have to be financial. You can adopt a school, you can be a tutor, now that COVID is here, some rules have changed, but there is something that you can do for this district. And so we're no different though than the urban districts across the country. We all have the same problems, poverty, what our children have to deal with when they go to their neighborhoods, crime, lack of jobs for their parents. So that parent engagement grant that I talked about, parents can take classes, they can get credentials, they can get workforce development services. We have to do all that we can, in Detroit, for those of us that are here and that have been here, we understand the gentrification that's going on right now. But this city belongs to Black people. We are still about 80%. But unfortunately, we're not able to take advantage of many of the, much of the economic development that's happening now, because of education, because of opportunities, because of lack of resources, because of a lot of things. And so if you care about this city and you live here, or if you just care about Black babies, you need to help us, because again, every child that we educate is another individual that's going to make this whole world a better place. Their community's a better place. Their parents will be better. Their families will be better. Their children will be better. Education is key. And education doesn't mean I have to go to Michigan State or U of M. Education just means I need to be learning things that will make my life richer and better. And that does normally mean picking up a book. And so we just have to explain to our children what the opportunities are for them and let them know that they can do anything. My teachers told me, little Pamela, you can do whatever you want to do. That they pretty much told me that every day, right after they spanked me. So we can't spank anymore. But right after they spanked me.
Would you say that's the greatest lesson you've learned?
What?
That anything is possible.
Anything is possible. I went to school with dear friends of mine. They didn't even excel in school. They didn't get the good grades. But after school, something was planted in them that allowed them to seek out whatever their passions were, whatever their interests were, and they've made a very good life for themselves. That could be vocational school. That could be just working and working your way up the ladder at an organization, and along the way you get skills. You're able to market yourself. You learn new things. You have to be able to do something, and our children need to understand that. And there are several different opportunities and pathways to become successful. And successful doesn't mean money. Successful means to wake up every day and to have something to look forward to and do whatever your passion is. That's success.
Yeah, absolutely. So now I ask you, the Detroit Public Schools Foundation, I want you to evaluate it. Scale of 1 to 10, we're not doing our job. We suck. 10, we're fantastic. We're blowing everything out of the water. Where would you rank it?
I love that question. No one's ever asked me that question. I would say we're an 8. We are doing what we were created to do. However, and resources, again, our capacity is any nonprofit. You always struggle with capacity. You always struggle with fundraising. I have to go and find money every year to pay staff, to pay my general operating support. So there's never enough staff, and there are never enough resources for you to do what you were created to do. But I think we do a pretty good job at assisting the district and filling in those gaps and writing grants. But again, I think the marketing piece and the communications piece and branding, so that people know who we are and what we do and really get the word out, we're challenged in that area because we don't have enough resources. But if I could put up billboards and spread the word, I think people would come running to help.
Yeah. So you almost jumping into the response to my next question, but I want to set it up. And so my next question is, you're at an 8, you want to go to a 10 and even be pushing 11 on a 10-point scale, 12 on a 10-point scale, right? And you got this switch that you flip it and now you're there. All right. So you're from an 8 to a 12. What does that 12 look like?
So that 12 looks like every alum that's able is on board. And even I always talk about those with family ties. So you didn't go to DPS or DPSCD, but mama was a principal. Dad worked at the school, or your neighbor did, or your cousin did, or you just care about children. And I have all of those folks on board giving back in some kind of way, being a monthly donor. Let me tell you about the celebrities and the very successful people that came out of this district. So think of a U of M and their alumni campaign and these multi-millionaires giving back to U of M, giving their estates, leaving them in their estates and their wills, giving back to their alumni schools. If I could have that, we've got Roz Brewer, CEO of Walgreens. The gospel artists that came out of Mumford, Dietrich Haddon, Fred Hammond, the Winans, the Clark sisters. If they could just call me. But celebrities and people who have done very, very well have come through this district for many, many years. If I could just get them to support financially and even come and do some fundraising for us, that's what it would look like. It would look like all of the really successful people that came through this district. If I could just have them, that would be my 12. That would be us just kicking butt every day, raising dollars. My capacity would be what it needs to be. My staff would look like what it needs to look like. And those children would not want for anything. They would have tutors. They would have dollars for after school programs. They would be seeing the world. They would have work, summer jobs, work-based learning opportunities. Parents would be okay. That's what that would look like.
That sounds marvelous. And so, as we build Dripping in Black, our goal is to go out to the world. And so now we have a world audience, right? So speaking into the audience, how can they support you from going from your 8 to 12? What's something tangible somebody that's watching this podcast can do to help you go from 8 to 12?
So, and I'll say the simplest thing is to plug into us. If you're interested at all, sign up for our newsletter. That way you know what we're doing, what the needs are. Go to our website, www.dps for Detroit Public Schools, FDN, Frank Denise Nancy for Foundation.org, dpsfdn.org. That way you keep up with what we're doing, who we're doing it with, what our partners are doing for the district, but most importantly, what the needs are for the district. And then we give you opportunities to support the foundation. That could be through monthly giving. We do have a YouTube channel. You can see our Champions of Education event that we just had last week. Just plug in and see who we are and what we do. I hesitate to say, send me $20 because we have to connect to your heart. We have to appeal to people in a special way. There are a lot of worthy organizations out here where you can send a check. But I think when you really understand some of the challenges that we have here in Detroit and our families are having and our children are having, I think you might want to help. And again, help comes in a lot of different ways. If you're local, you could come and paint an auditorium in a school or give to that school, tutor in that school. But if you want to kind of help district wide, or if you're from a high school that no longer exists, so some of our high schools went away, but you still want to give back, but there's no high school of yours to give back to the district. $20 helps. We found copper and lead in our water 3 years ago. We needed hydration stations in every school. We didn't have $3 million to purchase. We went to the community and said, these babies have lead and copper in the water. Can you help? The money came in. When we went out about our homeless children, the money came in. And the DPS Foundation can use the dollars where they're needed, when they're needed. Look us up. We have clean audits. We do not mismanage money. We are good stewards of your investment. And that's important to say.
Yeah, absolutely. So I got a few more things. I want to correct myself. I got a mentor that makes the nuanced difference between the word help and the word support. Help has a connotation that, you know, it's like you're in need and I am somebody who's not. Support is more like I'm helping you, I'm aiding you to get to where you want, right? And so I want to swap those words out, and just when my mentor watch backs, he knows I corrected myself on that. But that's also good. When the Hammonds and you know, the CC Winans start reaching out to you, do they go through the same channels, or is it somewhere they can reach out to you directly?
I would give my phone number, but they could email me directly, pmore@dpsfdn.org, pmore@dpsfdn.org. But, you know, and I've been here all my life, you know, I know people that know them, that have their cell phone numbers. And I'm about to, you know, I'm about to start knocking on doors and making phone calls, because we really need them, not only because of their celebrity, but because of their network and what they could be doing and how they could be giving back and how they could. So Carmen Harlan, who many local Detroiters know, she's retired now, but she was a anchor on one of our local stations. She's a Mumford graduate, and she did a wonderful video for us last week. And she told stories about her experiences at Mumford, and that a teacher said to her when she was in the 11th grade, you might want to think about broadcast journalism. And she did. And so we all have these stories from the district on that one person, that teacher or that individual, that counselor that really changed, that planted something that changed our lives. And we all have those stories. And if nothing else, people can come back and just talk to students. Just give our children inspiration and hope. You know, if the Winans came to Mumford and just talked about their journey coming through Mumford and how they became successful gospel artists, how valuable would that be? Come to our performing arts school and taught. We have a Detroit School of Arts where all of our children that want to be performing artists typically go. Come and talk to those young people about what it's, you know, what the business is like, what the industry is like, what some of the pitfalls are, what to look out for if you become like a Winans, you know, the management side, the financial piece. Just come and talk to our children, spend time with our children, let them know that we care.
Yeah. All right. So I got two more questions. The last one is the most important. But when we get before we get to that one, the question is, so you have the Detroit Public Schools Foundation, and you're doing a tremendous work. It's a necessary work. Why Pamela Moore?
What does that mean?
Why Pamela Moore? Why are you? What called you to this work?
Oh, well, so I'm the third president. The two presidents prior were educators. So when I heard the position was open, I called the president at the time and I said, it doesn't make sense for me to apply, right? Because I'm not an educator, you know, by training. And she said, no, I think you should apply. And so when I applied and got the job, and everyone that interviewed me said, why are you wanting to do this? And again, I had spent many years in the mayor's office, and that is a really a tough those are tough jobs, working and reporting to mayors. And I was a little exhausted, but I thought, what a wonderful thing to give back to the district that prepared me for, I think, every wonderful and fantastic experience that I've had. I have been blessed. I have gone into rooms where I never thought I would be invited. I was at the White House when Obama was president. I have a picture with President Biden with his arm thrown around me because I ran the Workforce Development Agency at the time, and we did such great work. Detroit Public Schools prepared me for all of that.
Yeah.
They gave me the confidence. They gave me the education, the academics, the arts. They gave me everything I needed to go out and slay. and I believe that wholeheartedly. And so it is my best job. It is my last job, please God. But it is a job I wake up every day excited to go to. And so I feel very blessed and privileged to be in this role.
Yeah, I figured as much, but I wanted to ask the question. I knew it was a reason. It drew you. It's kind of a full circle moment for you. And, I love the audacity of applying for a position that, you don't fit the qualifications according to what man may say. Right. But you went ahead and tried for it anyway, and you got it. And just by your energy alone, I just know you're driving that bus in a way that it wouldn't be driven if you weren't driving it. So that's just me from my seat.
I appreciate that. I just, I always tell young people, if you can find out what your passion is and what you're good at, and if you can put those two things together every day, it'll be a joy to wake up every day and go do those things if you're lucky enough. And so, I feel very fortunate to be in the role, and I want to leave the foundation stronger and better than when I came. And I always want these children to have someone rooting for them and to bridge that gap that the public dollars just don't pay for.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so now let's get to the most important question that we ask of every Dripping in Black guest. Are you ready for this?
I'm afraid of all of your questions. All of your questions have really been scary and hard. Okay, go ahead.
Well, you handled them very well. So the final question that we always ask our guests is, have you ever been on the cover of a magazine?
I have not. I have not been on the cover. I have not.
I'm actually stunned. If I had to bet, I would have bet that you had a couple of covers in your past.
I mean, so now you're making me think. I've been in some magazines, but not on the cover. Not on the cover.
In magazines, but not featured on the cover.
Not.
All right. Well, one of the things that we like to do here at the Dripping in Black podcast for each and every one of our guests is we like to place them on our magazine cover. So my producer, S Square Sean Smith, is going to give you a little sneak peek of your cover.
Oh boy. Okay, there I am. All right.
Yeah. All right. And so that is a parting gift that we give to all of our Dripping in Black alum. If you look over my shoulders, there are some covers from the first season of quite a few of our alum. And that I call the Wall of Fame. And that's where you're headed. We will get that printed out, mocked up for you, nice and pretty, and we'll mail it out to you. And we'll put a copy of it on our wall as well, just for you coming out.
Thank you.
I think I want to put the caveat out there that we'll send it to you sooner if you promise to come back on, and we can talk about a few more things.
I promise to come back on. I promise. Thank you. That is this is so great. Thank you.
Yeah. Now the pleasure is all ours. The Dripping in Black podcast is about celebrating Black excellence. We want the world to know that Black people are doing excellent things all over. Don't believe what the mainstream media does and how they try to portray us. The vast majority of us are out here doing excellent things, and you are a prime example. So the thanks is from us to you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
All right.
And thank you for all that you do.
Our thanks again to Pamela Moore. We'll ask the audience to hang on for the last segment, the last drip. And thanks again to Pamela Moore.
Up next, the last drip.
A Dripping in Black thanks to Pamela Moore for sharing her story with us and for her love and passion for DPS and DPS students. However, we have reached the final segment of our podcast called The Last Drip. The Last Drip is the last opportunity for us to squeeze in a bit more of Black excellence for you. In this final segment, we highlight a common thread between our guests and our vast and rich African American history. For this episode, we highlight a founding mother of Detroit schools, Fannie M. Richards. Born in October 1840 to free parents in Fredericksburg, Virginia, Fannie Richards was educated as a child in Toronto, Canada, and as an adult in Germany before eventually settling in Detroit in the 1860s. In 1863, she opened a private school for Blacks. In 1869, a landmark Michigan Supreme Court decision abolished segregation in the Detroit public schools. A few years later, in 1872, Richards taught the first kindergarten in Michigan at the newly integrated Everett Elementary School, where she would teach for 44 years. Richards was Detroit's first Black school teacher. Richards was also a community activist. She was one of the founders of the Phyllis Wheatley Home for Colored Ladies. She also served as president of the Michigan Federation of Colored Women's Clubs. In 1915, after more than 50 years of service, Richards retired from teaching. Fannie Richards' passion for the Detroit community is akin to this episode's guest, Pamela Moore. On November 2nd, 2021, because of her outstanding life and legacy as an educator and an activist in Detroit, she became this episode's last drip. For more on Fannie M. Richards, check out heroines-of-history.com, hmdb.org, elmwoodhistoriccemetery.org, and motorcitymuckraker.com. My thanks to all of these websites for the knowledge. The Dripping in Black audio podcast can be found on the most popular podcast platforms, and you can find our video version on the DIBK channel on YouTube, as well as Facebook Watch. Remember to subscribe, comment, like, share, and to tell a friend to tell a friend. We're about the intentional celebration of Black excellence, and we do this week after week after week. Also, you can like us and follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at DIBK20. My thanks to all of our listeners, viewers, supporters, and subscribers. And until next time, be kind, be loving, and be excellent on purpose. It is a choice.
You have just experienced a Dripping in Black production.